Welcome back to the channel, guys. Thought I'd do a little bit of a talking head piece today because there's been a new announcement by the DVLA regarding registration for classic cars, which if you've tried to register a hot rod or a modified classic car in the past, has always been a source of confusion, and if not confusion, then a little bit of worry about whether you'd be able to keep the historic plate, whether you'd be able to keep the historic status and thus all of the MOT exemption and the tax exemption. So under the previous, or the still current but soon to be out of date regulations, registration was done on an 8-point system. And as long as a car kept 8 points, where you got, for example, 5 points from an unmodified chassis if it was a body on frame, or 5 points from an unmodified monocoque, and then the remaining other points come from, suspension, axles, transmission, unchanged engine, etc., like that. Now, as long as you had 8 points, and so long as 5 of those points came from either the monocoque or from the unmodified frame, you were able to keep your historic status, and you were able to keep your historic registration plate. Now, obviously, I assume that the DVLA have gone down the route of changing to try and not really help us classic car and hot rod owners out, but to make their life a little bit easier, because on first reading, what it appears that they have done is remove that 8-point rule, and they're basically saying that even if you modify significantly your car, so cutting into the monocoque, changing the frame, all the sorts of things that would originally have lost you those 5 points, lost you your registration under the 8-point rules, and meant that you'd potentially have to go for an IVA approval test and maybe come out with a Q plate, seems to have gone. So reading through the rules, they say now that even after significant structural modifications, you can keep your original VIN and you can keep your original registration number. And this applies to modifications that are structural. So you're thinking of chopping up your 100E to put in a Mazda engine or a V8 or whatever. Previously, you cut the firewall out and you'd immediately have that sort of brown pants moment, am I going to lose my my registration? It doesn't look like that's the case anymore, which is decent. It's what we want, assuming that people in the press and people like myself are interpreting this correctly. It does also mean that if you go for an electric conversion, previously again you were able to change the engine so long as it was something that was available in period, and then that didn't affect your historic status, so you could upgrade to a slightly more modern engine so long as it was kind of within a reasonable time frame of the car being built, or it was an option that was available originally. But obviously that meant that people that were installing EVs, even if their EV conversion involved a motor that's bolted to the back of the original transmission or transaxle, kind of would have lost their original registration plate and had to undergo different testing. And I don't know whether this rule is being changed to kind of help that kind of cottage industry, to avoid a lot of red tape and a lot of challenge for registration. So it doesn't look like there's going to be any more Q plates. It doesn't look like you're going to have to go through any kind of additional IVA registration. But how far they'll allow you to push the structural modification, I don't know, because you still have a requirement to inform the DVLA of any changes. And like any kind of agency like this, the moment you inform them of any changes, they obviously have the right to send an inspector out to go and look at your car and to check its roadworthiness. So how much is this actually going to affect people? I don't know, but I think it will potentially make some cars that have over the last few years been a little bit more difficult to sell. So cars that have had bits of the monocoque sliced out to fit larger engines, where if you know a little bit about how the registration system works, you might be a little bit sketchy about buying it if it doesn't have a Q plate on it. Should make selling those a little bit easier and should make it a little bit less worrying for people who are actually chopping up good cars to build customs at them. So I guess we wait and see. It could be excellent news. You could get away with doing almost whatever you like, so long as it's safe and roadworthy without worrying about losing your registration. Or it could just be more of the same, designed to kind of reduce workload over in Swansea. Well, that's my take on the subject anyway. So if anyone wants to leave any comments as to how you've interpreted it, please do.